So I'm Christy, in-house writer of Hive. Hive is the hard-working space online magazine where we feature entrepreneurs and creatives across the Asia-Pacific region. First of all, could you tell us a bit about yourself? Give us an overview of the marketing and branding work you've been doing, because in the video you said you've built a business to over 1 million sales.
Originally from Australia, I'm based in the US now, as you can tell by the accent, it hasn't left. But I actually started in the field of marketing, probably when I was about 20 years old. I actually started running my own business, and that kind of evolved into doing monthly business-to-business networking events where I'd interview millionaires up on stage. And one of the reasons why I did that was for my own educational journey as well. I mean, what better way to learn from those that have already done it? Over the years, I kind of transitioned into doing online marketing education. So we've launched various online digital courses around how to run Facebook ads, how to do sales videos, like create the whole online marketing campaigns. And ultimately do social media marketing. The last few years, I think might have been the year before, we had well over 20,000 students take our online courses internationally. And then we've kind of transitioned into the space of biohacking in the last year because of my own personal health issues, but that's exploded. So the lessons I learned from marketing my other business and helping others, we actually launched a biohacking course that did over $500,000 worth of sales in less than 4 months, which really is a testament to show people that people are really out there seeking answers for their health, especially entrepreneurs who they're chronically stressed. They're always worried about finances. They wonder when the next check or sale is actually going to come in through the door. And that chronic stress causes a whole host of other issues that can trigger depression, anxiety, inflammation within the body, sleep disorders, a whole host of issues that get blamed, unfortunately, typically on a lack of willpower and a weak mental mindset, when in fact it's the biochemical side of things that's really fueling one part of it. Then the other part of it is the psychological side of it. I've kind of taken a step back and let's look at the biochemistry stuff and see how it's influencing our psychology at an unconscious level.
So at one point you were suddenly struck with depression and fatigue, brain fog and all that. Could you tell us when and how did that happen? What kind of thing that you think that triggers the symptoms, and tell us more about that experience.
I've had depression on and off my entire life, and it has kind of come and gone, but several years ago I did a 3-month trip around the US and Canada. It was kind of my first real holiday in over 10 years, and when I got back, that was when I started experiencing severe brain fog, fatigue, depression. I was angry all the time. I've never been an angry person. It's just not in my nature. And one of the other things that was happening is I was dizzy all of the time as well. So I'd wake up even after 8 hours of sleep thinking I should feel fine, but I'm actually dizzy. And I kept going to doctor after doctor in Australia. They kept on doing various lab tests. I can't even tell you how many different doctors I went to. But the typical responses from the doctors were, your lab tests are normal, you should be fine. You look fit and healthy. I was still going to the gym then, but that didn't coincide with how I was feeling. That kind of spurred me at one point. I just kind of came up with this crazy idea. I thought, how am I going to get healthy again? And I thought, I'm going to have to quit this business that I've just built to over $1 million in sales because I can't function. I'm only working, maybe 2 to 3 hours in the morning where I'm focused, then the afternoon is pretty much a write-off. And I came up with this crazy idea because I needed the little energy I had to work out my health issues. I pitched the idea to Entrepreneur magazine in the US that I would go on this 90-day mission to biohack my way back to health. And at the time, I remember writing that proposal. It should have only taken like half a day. It took about 2 weeks because how I was feeling. I sent it across and I kind of forgot about it. And then they came back and they went, okay, this is a really cool idea. But I said to them, I don't know what the outcome's going to be because I don't know what the issues are. Through that journey, I met with neuroscientists, doctors, different biohackers. And the issues were multi-layered. And I wish I could say for people like an entrepreneur who's struggling, hey, this is the one or two supplements you can take that'll fix everything. It's just not the case. What I found out was I was vitamin D deficient despite living in Florida. So I was getting plenty of sunlight. But when I spoke to the doctors, he actually did a test, and the vitamin D test came back that I was in the normal range, but I was at the bottom end of the normal range. Now, speaking to another doctor later on, I discovered that normal range is based on a 70 kilogram white 30-year-old male, which does not make up the demographic of the general population. So if you're at the bottom of the normal range, you still may be exhibiting symptoms because you're of a completely different demographic, weight or age. The other thing that the doctor also found is that I was also at the bottom range of having very real thyroid problems, to the point I'd have to go on medication due to adrenal fatigue. Thankfully, we kind of prevented that happening. As the journey kind of flowed forward, it was not just nutritional deficiencies, a big one, food sensitivities. I found out I'm highly sensitive to coconut and coffee. So if I have either of those two things, especially coconut, I will be depressed for about a week. I'll be angry. I'll have anxiety, and it sounds so bizarre to people. Doing the research for the book, I came across a woman by the name of Ruth Wallen, who was admitted to the psychiatric unit, and she was admitted with bipolar, depression, split personalities. Thankfully, a doctor came along that actually worked out that she was sensitive to caffeine, and that was the root cause of triggering all of these other issues. When entrepreneurs are watching this and they are having anxiety and they're stressed out and they're depressed, it may not just be the psychological side of things. It could be something else that's the trigger. If we look at the psychological side of things, chronic stress causes inflammation, and the first place that shows up is in the brain. Now, inflammation is directly related to depression and anxiety, and obviously different memory issues. So someone might launch their business with the best intention, but then we all know what it's like to be in business. It's like one of the most stressful and rewarding things you could ever do at the same time. But after a while, that stress can take a real toll. And when that stress is triggered, it turns in a fight or flight mode where we're constantly kind of anxious, we're looking over our shoulder, we're always panicking. When that switches on, we lose access to our prefrontal cortex, which is in control of personality as well as rational thinking. So people will find themselves acting out of character or making really stupid business decisions.
How long did you live with all those symptoms, like the depression thing, before you try to address them? You know, mostly as men, they tend to deal with it, but delay,
Yeah, I've always been interested in health my whole entire life, so I kind of tried to tackle it as best as I could from the get-go. I think it was probably within the first couple of weeks of exhibiting it that I started buying all of these different supplements, researching online, looking at all of the science behind the supplements. I probably tested maybe 20 or more. But because at the very start I was flying blind, I hadn't done all of the various lab tests that I've done recently through the biohacking experience. I couldn't pinpoint what that issue is. And the other issue was I was eating one of the cleanest diets you could imagine. A nutritionist had recommended coconut oil, which I included in my diet, which was a trigger for my depression. So it's we think we're doing healthy, we're making healthy choices, but sometimes it might be that one ingredient that you think is just doesn't mean anything, but each of us we have a unique bio-individuality. So we all respond to things very differently.
And how did you come across the idea of biohacking? And could you just give us an idea what exactly that is, in layman's terms, for people who don't really know this idea?
Cool. So when I was really struggling, and it was the same week I pitched this crazy book idea, I came across a guy by the name of Dave Asprey, who's the creator of Bulletproof Coffee. And he's kind of triggered this whole biohacking movement, and it pretty much started with the coffee itself. I was listening to his book, and he was sharing his own story of going through very similar symptoms and not getting the answers he needed from the doctors. That's kind of my first introduction. But for people that don't know, biohacking is really the art and science of looking at your biochemistry as well as your psychology and changing internal as well as external environmental factors to optimize us for peak performance, body and mind.
What kind of thing does biohacking involve? Is it just like eating and all, like how do you change the external environment and internal environment too?
The external environment is very hard to change. So when we're kind of at home in our own space, there's certain things that we can do in that. And for some people, it may even include moving locations. There was one quite shocking study I came across in the research, which was teenagers who were exposed to a high level of pollution off of a freeway nearby to their homes exhibited higher levels of aggression. Now, you think about how much pollution is in our world. I lived in New York last year for 6 months. Like, you are living in it in New York, you know, that would include getting an air filter in our home. We actually also had a little monitor that would actually flash red if the air quality dropped, if there was too much CO2 or other toxins in the air. So open up a window. Other biohacking experiments, I always like to go with the science because I think there are a few cowboys in the biohacking industry that are trying things without learning about what's really impacting them individually. That could be going to your doctor, getting your blood test done to see if there are nutritional deficiencies, seeing if there are any hormonal issues or thyroid issues, low vitamin D. I mean, vitamin D is implicated in anxiety and depression, and so many of us live in workplaces with fluoro lights where we're not getting that natural sunlight. And that's also screwing up our circadian rhythm, our sleep rhythm at night. The other kind of biohacking things that people can do is there's actually this cool device here. It's called the Muse. So what you do is you actually put it on your head. So you can look like Dr. Spock from Star Trek. And through the app itself on the phone, you do a meditation session. And what it does is there are actually little biofeedback sensors at the front here and actually the rubber part that sits behind your ear. When you're meditating, you hear music or you hear the ocean. When you're in a calm state, it's calm and you start to hear birds chirping, so you get that immediate biofeedback say, right, this is what a calm state actually feels like. Let's focus in on that. When you're not calm, the ocean waves will pick up and it'll sound like a storm. So it's that immediate biofeedback that allows you to go, okay, just calm my thoughts down, refocus. And what you're ultimately doing is you're retraining your brain to be in a specific mental state. Social media is really retraining our brains to focus for limited amounts of time in a distracted manner. We're constantly flipping through the social media feed, flipping through browsers. What I found using this device is that you can really get into that state of calm, and when you realize that you start scrolling through social media, you can kind of stop and put it down because you have been training your brain to kind of stop those distractions and reset. More advanced biohacking ones this is a pretty cool device. Right. It has lights that actually in the ear and actually through the visor. So it sits over top of your head like this. You put the visor down and you listen to different audio programs that have a combination of NLP and hypnosis. The lights in the front panel actually flash in sync with binaural beats. This particular device has been created to retrain your brain, but also to get specific brain waves happening, because a lot of us are potentially in delta, which is where that's the deep sleep brainwave ultimately. When I met these guys, they actually did a test on me and they found that my circadian rhythm was out of whack. So my brain was actually in a vegetative state during the day when I needed to be working. It was in delta. By using this device at key times of the day, I've been testing it the last couple of weeks and I can tell you it's nothing short of amazing. I'm getting to bed almost 2 hours earlier. I'm getting up in a full hour earlier. I'm getting more sleep, and I don't get that mid-afternoon slump. Typically, when my circadian rhythm's out of whack by mid-afternoon, my brain's saying it's time for bed, when my conscious mind is saying, no, it's time for work. There are a couple of kind of like the cool biohacks that people are doing.
What are the major difference between biohacking and also the more basic health advice and traditional kind of approach to physical and mental wellness? So why would people go to biohacking when they could just, go to the doctor and get some medicine?
One of the issues with medicine, and I did a lot of research on this for the book, is that there are so many side effects associated with different medications. I'm certainly not bashing all medications because a lot of it is life-saving, a lot of it is essential. But there are instances, especially here in the US, there is an advert. There's probably 3 or 4 ads in each ad break that are talking about the medications, but then list out all the side effects, which are suicidal thoughts, random tendencies, behavior changes, depression, anxiety. What people are doing is they're covering up one issue with one medication. That medication's potentially triggering a whole host of issues. But that individual may not be aware that they may not be able to distinguish, is it the medication that's causing the issues or the original cause? So when it comes to biohacking, it's about getting to the root cause. So that would be going to a functional doctor. So a functional doctor will typically spend half an hour to an hour with a patient compared to a traditional GP, which might be 5 to 10 minutes. You can't successfully get to the root cause in 5 to 10 minutes. The system is certainly broken in the medical system, and it's tough for doctors because the way that some of their billing works is they have to make a diagnosis so they get paid. Things have shifted a lot when it comes to biohacking. It's kind of that next step up from the other health advice. It's like actually go out and scientifically validate how you feel, get to the root cause. You may need some medication, that may just be the case, but you shouldn't automatically be given a medication without finding the root cause of what the original trigger was.
Biohacking is an interesting trend that has recently amped up. Yeah. So what do you think has catapulted this idea into the limelight?
There's a few things. I think one of the issues that we've seen lately is depression and suicide rates are skyrocketing. People aren't getting the answers that they wanted from their typical GPs, so they are searching for this information online because we all have access to the same studies and the same research that doctors have access to now through online publications, medical publications. The other factors are obviously the key influences in the health industry, people like Dave Asprey, Dr. Joseph McCullough. There's a whole ton of key influencers who are really pushing this movement forward, who are ultimately trying to improve performance overall.
Many still, to be honest, they are still looking at this approach with a skeptical eye. Yeah. Think that maybe it's a fad or something. So how would you respond to this kind of criticism?
There's a lot of misconceptions about it. I think the first most important thing for people to realize is it's scientifically validated. In my case, and especially for this book, we wanted to get it right. So we went to the neuroscientists, doctors, psychologists, clinical social workers, nutritionists. We then had 3 different editors work on the book, 2 medical editors, one also worked in the medical profession, and a 3rd fact checker. And then we actually sent it out to 60 doctors, psychiatrists, nutritionists, clinical social workers. So I really put my feet to the flame when it came to this project, because that was one of the concerns that I had, where people are questioning the validity of it. Every step of the way I said, all right, here's my theory. Let's speak to a doctor about it. Let's prove it right or prove it wrong, but just prove it in some form. For people that are questioning it, the first thing that you've got to know is it's based on scientific data, like blood test results, for example.
If we are going to get into biohacking, what are some of the more common or everyday methods that we could, do to kickstart this?
The first step I always recommend to people is go to a functional doctor, get a blood panel test done, check for any nutritional deficiencies. It is well known through the research that nutritional deficiencies can mimic psychological disorders like anxiety and depression. So that's the instance where someone might be blaming themselves, saying that they're not good enough, that they're tired, that they're depressed, they're sad, when in fact there's an underlying cause to that. We had an incredible case study where an individual who was suicidal for about 5 years on and off, she just couldn't get out of it despite going to therapy every single week, had her blood test done, found out there was minute traces of vitamin D, started supplementing. Within a week, she was feeling great. This is after 5 years of almost attempting suicide. That's a severe case. The second thing is to clean up food, what we're eating, no highly processed foods. A lot of the fried foods that we tend to eat, like fries and donuts that we all love, is in oils that when they're cooked, they can cause different kind of inflammation and issues within our brain. The third way is through nootropics. Nootropics are supplements that you can take to help improve brain performance and energy. Two of my favorite ones, and the entrepreneurs are going to love these two, are L-tyrosine and L-theanine. L-tyrosine really kind of lights up your brain so you can get focused. And L-theanine, it relaxes without sedation. The amount of focus that one can have on just those two combinations alone is incredible. It is important to know with nootropics, your body always tries to return back to a state of homeostasis. Your body could get used to them after a period of time, so you want to cycle them. So have a weekend off or have a week off and then restart them again, and you'll notice the effects increase. And they're just a couple of simple steps.
Any practice you're personally now adopting to, maintain your mental and physical well-being?
Yeah,
and
so
how has biohacking changed you as a person?
The daily ones are either Muse or now this device. So I always meditate on a daily basis. I do have a specific kind of visualization practice that I've been doing for a number of years now, and that is every single morning I'll shut my eyes and visualize how I see my day unfolding, like getting all of my projects done, being happy, confident, focused. Through to the end of the day into next day, I'll rewind it, fast forward, rewind it. And you can just do that shutting your eyes quite quickly. What you're actually doing is you're tricking your subconscious mind into thinking you've been there and done it before, so you've got nothing to worry about. And the thing about stress is when we get stressed out, it's almost as if life ends at a certain point around that specific project or event. So think of bridezilla, a wedding. She can't see into the next day or the next month where everything's settled and everything's happy again. So it's like a kettle building up pressure to this point where it's going to explode. If you visualize through that event, rewind, fast forward, and do it back and forth 10 times, all of a sudden you'll notice you're no longer worried about it. You're actually excited about it, and you can relax into the moment. So that's one of the things that I always do on a daily basis. Nootropics is definitely one. In terms of how it's changed me personally, I'm very much more conscious about my environment, what I put in my body, what I'm willing to accept in my environment, and what I'm not willing to accept in my environment. When I was looking and researching into the book, what I found was whether it's like the meditation devices or nootropics, everything is pretty much geared around calming our primal mind. And that's really important for people to understand, because when we do hit into our primal mind when we're stressed out, we also enter it when we're also fatigued and also craving foods. The second we start getting hungry, our brain goes into our primal mind, starts to panic, saying we need to eat right now. Second that occurs, once again, you're going out of your prefrontal cortex that's in control of the rational thinking and personality, and you're flipping this switch into the primal mind, which I call self-preservation mode. So if you think of it on a scale from 0 to 100, say 50% and above is kind of peak performance. Obviously, the top 10% is like the highest. 50% is the bare minimum. So if you drop below that 50% threshold, you're in self-preservation mode. And that is where you'll exhibit anxiety, depression, stress. You'll notice certain physiological changes, so a lot of tension, you're always anxious. It's important for people to understand that it's okay for you to be in that state. Just recognize it and accept it, instead of blaming yourself, instead of automatically going, I'm a weak person, I just need to suck it up, I just need to toughen up. Just accept that this is what's actually occurred and start to make small incremental changes to change it. And that could be, if you're hungry, eat. It could be, if you're tired, sleep. Like, it's all basic things. Don't just automatically assume that it's of a weak mental mindset. And we have this whole hustle until you die culture where just push through. I think it's huge over where you are right now, I'm assuming. So we're not valuing sleep like we used to. Kind of pushed away to the side, you just have to do it. And social media, the way that things are moving so quickly is another factor in that. We need to take a step back and just understand it's not normal for us to have that high level of brain activity constantly throughout the day, and for us to expect ourselves to be rested and performing at our best. Those two things just don't go hand in hand. Things that trigger that self-preservation mode are the nutritional deficiencies, not eating right, not getting enough sleep, side effects from medications, also toxins in our environment. There are also the other factors, and of course psychology is an aspect of that, but it's certainly not the only one. And the changes in our environment right now, I would say we're starting to lean more towards the biochemistry side of things with the toxins and the food and everything else, more so than the psychological side. I believe this side is having a larger impact than what any of us realize, what any of us expect, and I really don't believe that most of us are prepared for it because we're not aware of it.
I think it's a really great idea to introduce into the Asia area because, as you said, we're all hustling and we're probably not paying that much attention to what we're putting into our mouth too.
Yeah. Well, the book's actually getting translated into Chinese later this year as well. Yeah.